Thank you all for coming. And we are all looking forward to this teach-in and to hear from international students, international graduates, activists, and all of you. And hopefully we'll have a really good discussion. Even though we are on lands that are subject to the treaties, it is notable that matters of migrants coming, going, and staying are decided by one side of the treaty only, that is the settler colonial state. Something to think about. About 200,000 former international students now holding postgraduate work permits, which allow them to work in Canada for specified periods of time, are now facing deportation because the government has suddenly changed its policies, specifically the two-step pathway to permanent residency, which it had provided over the last 2 decades. In fact, in 2021, during the pandemic, government announced that permanent residency would be opened up for 90,000 essential workers and international graduates who were in essential services such as in the healthcare sector and long-term care. They of course had to have completed 1 year of Canadian experience, work experience. This was part of the pandemic recovery program. So these postgraduate work permit holders who were patiently collecting work hours, sometimes in very exploitative conditions, and preparing to apply for permanent residency, have now been cut short in their pathway to permanent residency application. Even though Canada had energetically welcomed international students during the pandemic, the largest source being from India, it has now suddenly imposed a cap on the numbers of international students, on migrant workers, and even on skilled immigrants. And all this has happened in the context of virulent racist scapegoating of migrants, including international students. All of a sudden, international students and graduates have changed from the solution to the problem of all of Canada's problems. The housing crisis, the affordability crisis, and so on. Cost of living requirements for international students has also doubled, which means they have to bring double the amount of money with them. In addition, it has been announced that post-graduation work permits will be eliminated for those graduating from collaborative private-public colleges, which is where many international students study. Many other systemic obstacles have been put in their way, the details of which we will hear today from the panelists and from activists and international students and international graduates also. Members of the Naujawan Support Network, or NSN, have been encamped in Brampton for the last 2.5 months in protest of the whole situation. And we are very fortunate and excited to have with us members of the encampment team and members of Naujawan Support Network who will be speaking to us and will provide more details about the general information that I have mentioned. Some of us may ask, why don't they go back? They have graduated, why don't they go back to their countries where they're from? And I've had the occasion to engage a few students, with asking them that very question. If graduates of colleges and postgraduate work permit holders return to their home countries or are deported, they will be returning with huge debts. And not to mention the stigma of returning in such an undignified way. Moreover, many have been here for several years, and they have developed a sense of belonging here. They have developed friends, and so it would be very difficult for them to return, just like that. So before I pass you on to the next segment, I'd like to give some thanks to our co-sponsors of this event, York Graduate Students Association, York Center for Asian Research, Canadian Union of Public Employees 3903, York University Faculty Association, Sikh Student Association, and first generation immigrant students. I also want to particularly recognize and thank, and I'd like a big round of applause for the person behind this entire event, without whom we wouldn't all be here today, Rajdeep Sidhu. He's the one who has done all the coordination and everything, but he remains in the background. Rajdeep is a PhD candidate in the sociology department at York University. And thank you all for coming once again. And also to those, I believe there are a few who have joined us on Zoom. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Ethel Tangohan, a faculty member in the Department of Politics here at York University. Please welcome Ethel.
It's such an honor to be sharing space with all of you today, and I think I speak for all of us when I say that it's time for us to really put at the center migrant advocacy, especially pertaining to international students. I won't speak too much more, but I am going to be moderating this panel, and I think we have a lot to get through, so why don't we just get started? So the way the panel will work is we have a group of really accomplished activists here who will be sharing their thoughts on some of what's been unfolding with respect to the stigmatization of international students. And they will also be talking about ways through which we can all fight back. I'll do a quick round of introductions, and then we'll just proceed first with opening statements, and then I have a few questions that I want to ask our esteemed panel. So I'd like to introduce all of you to Hannah Sabit. This is Hannah. Hannah is the Communications and Campaigns Officer of Migrante Canada. Next to Hannah is Javier. Javier, do you want to wave? Javier Hardalaza is the coordinator of the Filipino International Students Network and is currently the vice chairperson of Migrante Canada. Welcome, Javier. Next to Javier is Jerome Rowe, who is with the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change. And over here, we've got Jaspreet Singh, who is with the International Sikh Students Association. So we'll just go in the order of my introduction. So I will now pass on the mic to Hannah Sabit, if that's okay, to give your opening remarks.
Hi everyone. Like Professor Tawan mentioned, my name is Hannah, and I'm the Campaigns and Communications Officer of Migrante Canada. Migrante Canada is a chapter of Philippine-based Migrante International. It is a global alliance of over 200 member organizations in 23 countries. Migrante Canada was founded in October 2010 and has 14 chapter members and organizations across Canada. Migrante Canada work to promote migrants' rights and dignity against all forms of discrimination, exploitation, and abuse in the workplace and in the community, and resist all anti-migrant policies. We also work to assert the right to organize, to strengthen unity among the Filipino diaspora and rally their families and advocates towards the upholding of migrants' rights for jobs, fair wages, and due recognition. We also push for the building of a self-reliant economy to stop forced migration, promote social equity and justice, and unite with other sectors of society to the advancement of national development and democracy in the Philippines. We also build solidarity with other migrants' organizations and of other nationalities and peoples who are against the plunder of economies, destruction of the environment, and wars of aggression that cause widespread poverty and injustice. Currently, Migrante Canada has campaigns. In Canada, we fight for regularization and status for all. We have also a new campaign, Sagip Migrante, which aims to gather support, material support for the victims of calamities in the Philippines. Primarily recently, Typhoon Trami or Typhoon Christine that has affected many communities in the Philippines and have taken many lives. In BC, we have 2 campaigns against illegal recruitment in Canada. In BC, it's the Justice for the Victims of the Promised Land Consultancy. And here in Ontario, we are waging Tanggol Migrante, or Defend Migrants who are victimized by the same illegal recruiter and illegal recruitment agency from our previous campaigns, Justice for Mushroom 4. And in the Philippines, our call is to end the labor export program, jobs at home, not abroad, and of course, free Mary Jane Veloso, our kababayan, Filipino migrant worker victimized of human trafficking. Her traffickers are already convicted, but she's still facing death row in Indonesia as we speak right now for 14 years. Migrante Canada is also a member of MRN, Migrants' Rights Network, IMA, International Migrants Alliance, an anti-imperialist alliance of grassroots and grassroots organizations and of non-profit organizations. Bayan Canada, or the National Patriotic Alliance of Filipino fighting for national democracy in the Philippines, the International League of People's Struggle, and the CCR, or the Canadian Center for Refugees. Like I mentioned, we fight to end the forced migration back home because we believe that the Philippines, we don't believe, it is true. The Philippines is rich, but the people are poor. We don't have national industry in the Philippines. We don't have genuine agrarian reform in the Philippines. Majority of our people are landless and are selling the lands that they don't own. LEP, or the Labor Export Program, a systematic exportation of Filipinos and their labor to keep the Philippine economy afloat, is our government's response and solution to the ever-worsening socio-political and economic crisis. And the Labor Export Program has led to conditions of modern-day slavery for many Filipinos, driven by low wages and inadequate labor protections. Recently, there are various changes in immigration policy that I think we will also be discussing. But our call remains the same in Migrante Canada. It's to fight for genuine land reform and national industrialization to address the root cause of our forced migration. And that's also one of our concrete contribution to stopping the settling in the lands and territories of Indigenous peoples in Canada. Oh, sorry, I just wanted to end quickly, by reading some experts from our Migrante Canada statement last September 14 to 15 from the Canada-wide actions in collaboration with MRN. On September 6, 2023, Professor Tomoya Obokata of the UN Special Rapporteur on Contemporary Forms of Slavery released a critical report on Canada's Temporary Foreign Worker Program. He declared that agricultural and low-wage streams of the Temporary Foreign Workers Program constitute a breeding ground for contemporary forms of slavery. Migrante Canada recognizes that while status is important for migrant workers, addressing low-wage and precarious working conditions are also pressing issues. The Canadian government's reluctance to implement a living wage undermines workers' ability to afford decent housing and meet basic needs, thereby perpetuating their exploitation. The government's policy of closed work permits makes migrant workers vulnerable to threats, if not actual forms of abuse, violence, and deportation. For Philippines, addressing these issues requires fundamental changes to make national industrialization and genuine land reform a reality for Filipinos. Creating job opportunities will reduce the need for Filipinos to seek employment abroad under conditions of modern slavery. Thank you.
Hello everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you for inviting us here, and thank you for being here. So again, my name is Javier Hardelesa from ISSN. So just a quick background, what is Filipino International Students Network? So it came into being through the continuous organizing and mobilizing of Migrante Ontario, a chapter member of Migrante Canada and a member of Migrante International. So in 2022, there are different discussions sponsored by the current allied organizations discussing about the issues and concerns of international students. So in May 4, 2024, official launching of Filipino International Students Network to continue the organizing and mobilizing of Filipino international students, primarily in Toronto and in Ontario province. So it's a new network. And what is FISN is FISN is the network of current and former Filipino international students, as well as their allies that advocate, organize, and mold the Philippines. everything is interconnected, right? So yeah, no one exists on its own. And with that, highlights, just 3 highlights, there are some changes on the IRCC policies. So the question now is, for whom and for what these changes, right? For the billionaires to have more money, or for us as the migrants. So yeah, so I would like to highlight the recent one, the changes. One, the proposed reduction of temporary residents from 6.5% of Canada's total population to 5% will be reflected in the 2025-2027 immigration levels plan, reducing from 500,000 permanent residents to 395,000 in 2025, reducing from 500,000 permanent residents to 380,000 in 2026, setting a target of 365,000 permanent residents in 2027. And this is from IRCC News released last October 24, 2024, when former Prime Minister Trudeau and Honorable Minister Miller announced it last October 2024. Second one is IRCC announcement last August 28, 2024, which Migrante, pay attention to this. This is the first one, the cessation of the policy allowing migrants who are in tourist visas to apply for work permits within Canada. So that's also affected. And the third one is the cessation of processing LAMIAs, or Labor Market Impact Assessment, for jobs in the low-wage stream category for the Temporary Foreign Workers Program in some metropolitan areas. So for us, those are the 3 major new policies, although there's a lot of changes before, but these are the 3 new policies. So why all those things happening? And the first one I've said is basically everything is interconnected. So why we migrate in Canada? Because we want a Canadian dreams. And what are those Canadian dreams? One of that is basically, I asked one of the international student, Philippine international student, is that to have a Canadian passport, which is one of the most powerful passport in the world. But considering these changes, it's a big problem for us, and there's a big challenge, okay? Now, why do we leave our home country? Like in the Philippines, what that Hannah already had said, is basically, in general, in the Philippine context, poverty. Why? There's a poverty going on in my home country. It's basically globalization policies, or the neoliberalization policies. And what is globalization policies? We are living in a multipolar world right now, right? So globalization, as I have said, everything is interconnected. While we are addressing the issues here in Canada for the international students, regardless from the Philippines or from other different parts of the world, they are being affected by globalization. And globalization is a political and economic processes by industrialized imperialist countries by forming blocks and territories and division of the world, a source of cheap raw materials, cheap labor, field of investment and markets, and a sphere of influence as colonies and semi-colonies. That's why we are, as I have said, we are living in a multipolar world right now. For example, before the G7, you know probably what group of 7 are, right? US, Canada, Japan, UK, Germany, Italy, and France. Yesterday, there was a new president in the United States, and how does it impact? But that's a different story, right? How does it impact the international student, right? The IMF, World Bank, General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, WTO, and NATO. Now, they're being challenged by another bloc. Have you heard the BRICS bloc, right? BRICS bloc stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And there are different countries, for example, Saudi Arabia, are thinking that they would like to be a member of this new bloc, right? So they have the policies like Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Belt and Road Initiative, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, etc. And all these policies affecting the people or the working class, especially the migrants, especially the peasants and the workers in our home countries, in the Philippines. They just want the raw materials, the cheap labor. They don't want us to industrialize. Which, you know, Hannah already mentioned, the policies imposed by this globalization, for example, policies such as the privatization of the profitable public assets. deregulation and denationalization of the economies, mostly from the global south countries, where most of us came from, liberalization of the economy, mostly from the global countries, such as accepting terms and conditions of general agreement tariffs and trade, etc. And for us, why there's an influx of Filipino international students in Canada? First one, the massive poverty in the Philippines that is indicative of the economic and political crisis in the Philippines brought about by these neoliberal policies by globalization. And maybe not only in the Philippines, but from your home country, just, it's time to sort of like reflection or to think about why we, in the first place, we migrate to Canada. Second, in the Philippines, there is a continued decline in the workers' wages, no lands for the tillers, lack of decent jobs, unceasing increase in the prices of goods and services, and worsening neglect of social services. Maybe from your home country, where you came from, is the same situation like in my home country. And the third, no genuine agrarian reform and national industrialization that will create long-term and permanent jobs in the Philippines. And the last one, what is to be done? So the changes in immigration policies are expected to result in let me read the excerpt from Immigrants Canada. The changes in immigration policies are expected to result in an increase in unemployment among migrants, a further increase in the number of undocumented or those who will lose status in Canada, intensifying racism and discrimination against migrants, lack of access to housing and health services, continuous rising prices of goods, and decrease in the value of wages. Thus, this is not surprising that this will further push migrants in general to have 2 or 3 jobs to keep up with the high cost of living in Canada. I read that news before, a few months ago. They are blaming us for the housing crisis for the international students, right? Do you believe in that? That we are the, it's not. It's the policy of neoliberal and also the speculation of the billionaires who own this private housing, right? And did you know that the contribution of international students in the GDP, Canadian economy, in 2023 alone is 40 billion Canadian dollars. 40 billion Canadian dollars. And yet, we are the problem why there is the housing crisis in Canada, right? So think about that. So, what is to be done? Strengthen FISN by agitating, organizing, and mobilizing Filipino international students. Second, strengthen collaboration with other international students, organizations, or networks. Support the call for unity among all migrant workers for a living wage, because we cannot cope up high cost of living. So there's supposed to be a living wage, not only for the billionaire, but mostly for the migrants and for the working class people. Support the call for an end to the closed work permit tied through LAMIA, or labor market impact assessment, because this further exploits migrant workers and treats them as slaves tied to their employers. Support the call for regularization and status for all, especially for those with undocumented status. Support the call for the junking of labor export policy by the Philippine government. So again, it is our advocacy is tied back home. This is somewhere about the policies back home. Support the call for genuine agrarian reform and national industrialization that will create a long-term and permanent jobs in the Philippines. And support the progressive candidates for the upcoming Philippine midterm election that will happen in May 2025. So there is a midterm election happening in the Philippines in May of 2025. And lastly, Canadian economy will not prosper in the hands of billionaires, but Canadian economy will prosper in the hands of the migrants and working class people in general. The people united will never be defeated. Long live international solidarity. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Folks at the back, there are I think a couple seats here. For those who can stand, please stand. Stand up if you are a current or former international student or a person without permanent resident status. Okay. Keep standing or stand up if you've ever faced discrimination on the basis of your race, your religion, your gender, your sexuality. Keep standing and stand up if you've ever been mistreated by your employer, not paid wages, or have faced abuse at work. Yeah. Stand up if you're worried about the future, right? Many of us are grad students here. Stand up if you're worried about employment, about where things are going with our economy. Keep standing and stand up if you've ever joined an action or want to because you know that there's something fundamentally wrong here. I see every person in this room is standing for those of us who can stand. This is the experience of current and former international students, of migrant workers who are not only at the forefront of being impacted by these crises, but are every day fighting back. And I think the Najwan Support Network is such a clear example of this, right? This is the story of our members at the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change. You can all sit down now. 16 years ago, a group of migrant care workers from the Caribbean and the Philippines met because they were being abused by their employers. Their employers were keeping their documents. They were also facing a lot of exploitation from recruiters, which Migrante was at the forefront of fighting against, and they were also facing issues with permanent resident status. One of them was around medical inadmissibility. This is when Canada says that you're too sick to get permanent residency. Canada also says that you can be too poor to get permanent residency, financial admissibility. Canada also says that you might not be able to get permanent resident status because you are a fake migrant. We saw this very clearly in the Morcha last year about how those laws get used against us and how we can also fight against them. These care workers came together and fought and won massive changes to recruiter laws and medical inadmissibility laws that today still impact our people. And they didn't stop there. They met with other temporary foreign workers who were working in agriculture, the people who grow and harvest our food, with other temporary foreign workers who are working in key industries like the restaurant sector and cleaning, what during the pandemic were hailed as heroic and essential jobs, but today are being deemed as low wage and therefore unwanted jobs. They came together and started to organize and continue to organize these groups of women and racialized people. And together they formed what today is the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change. That's 16 years ago. I want to share the story of not only what we're struggling with, but about the need to fight against it. Our organization is called an alliance because that's precisely it. We organize in different sectors of, based on the kind of immigration programs that we've come under or the kind of work we're doing, but we organize as one unit, as a collective, as one voice, one heartbeat. And right now, more than ever, when so many of us are under attack, not only migrants, but everyday working people in this country are under attack, whether you're a migrant or not, whether you're racialized or not, now is the time, more than ever, to be in solidarity with each other. And solidarity is only formed in struggle itself. It's not one that's taught or learned, although that's very important too, to do that kind of social investigation, but it's formed in struggle. And that means things like being on the front lines to support the people who are holding it down in Brampton, joining the international students who are fighting against wage theft, joining the farm workers who are talking about how they're being paid, not being paid after working 16 hours a day or being told that they have to go home if they're injured. Now is the time for us to be in solidarity with each other, and I'm really looking forward to, in this panel discussion, talking about some ways to do that. How many of us here are worried about the grocery prices? Yeah, a lot of us. Worried about how we're going to pay for tuition fees, which may go up now, right? As the provincial government is saying, okay, we have no money now, right? And kicking the ball down the road, even as they turn a blind eye to the fact that the president of this university gets paid $500,000. Many of us are struggling, and yet the people who have created the system, as Hannah and Javier have kind of detailed so well, they're actually not struggling. In fact, they're making revenue off of our precarity, off of our shared crisis. And the numbers prove it. Every day in the news we see more headlines about how it's international students who are, stealing jobs or responsible for the housing crisis, but the numbers show it themselves. The three CEOs of the 3 biggest grocery chains in Canada in 2023 made a profit of $3.1 billion. That's what these grocery chains made a profit of. Well, the rest of us, the majority of us, go to the checkout lane and end up not buying some of the things that we have put in our basket because we can't afford it. They individually, as people, pocketed $11 billion in revenue. So we have to understand that right now we are being told that it's somebody else to our left and our right who are responsible for these crises, but it's really not. It's the people, and we have to resist and reject all urges to punch down or punch to the side, and we have to punch up together. This is a classic tactic of divide and conquer, which is that you are being told that immigrants and racialized people are responsible, and that's why we have to do things like implement these massive cuts, right? We know this is going to get bad, and I've made eye contact with a lot of you here. We have glowing eyes because I really see the desire for us to do something here today. And it starts today. It starts right now. It starts 1 hour after this panel for us to be in action together. And there are very specific things. All of us brought some flyers because we're all action oriented. There are very specific things we can do. But I want us to also really remember that every day our people are fighting back. We are fighting back, and we're doing it with dignity because we're not numbers. We're not data on a page or media stories. We're full people with lives here, who built our homes here, who have deep roots here. Everybody, someone you know or love or work with or study with is a migrant in this country, and that's our reality, and it's in our collective best interest, in our collective best class interest, to punch up together and hold the people who are profiting off of our misery responsible. And I know we can do it, and we've done it before, we'll do it again. Thank you.
Hi, this is Jaspreet Singh from International Sikh Student Association. I'm also Vice President for World Sikh Organization of Canada, Regional Vice President from Ontario. My colleagues have already shared some great insights, what is going on, what challenges we are facing, what challenges each community is facing, and the future doesn't seem that bright, right where we are standing right now. You guys might have heard of the students protesting in Brampton in last couple of months. There were many meetings, many meetings with MPs, MPPs, all levels of governments. Close to 150,000 work permits are expiring. The initial number was 70,000. Now it just keep growing. And yesterday we had a meeting with Mark Miller on the same issue, and his question was why they don't want to go back. Why can't they go back? And my response was, these people, majority of the people, right now here I'm representing 6 students, but this is a story of literally everybody. They have spent lifetime resources, lifetime savings of their families on a Canadian education so that they can escape their country, wherever they're living right now, and come to this country, have a Canadian education, so that they can have a Canadian work experience and get immigration status. This is what the government was advertising back then. And now, after draining resources from those regions, now the government is just asking them to go back.
Can you be a little bit louder? I don't think you can hear it.
Oh, okay, sorry. And the other reason is, the post-secondary education that most of these international students have. The same way Indian education or education from any other country is irrelevant in Canada, in a similar way, this education is irrelevant in those countries. How can we push them literally off the cliff, push them through the cracks in the system, and expect them that they can thrive after losing everyone each and every resource they have on their education? This is a big problem, and it is also multi-dimensional. As I mentioned before, the number right now is close to 100,000. Next year, the number will be almost double, and the year after, it will be again double, and then the year after, in 2026 or 2027, the number will be really worse because in 2021 and 2022, a record number of international students came into Canada, and most likely they will face same problem, same issue, and they will go through the same problems those we mentioned right now. Recently, there was a report by CBC, actually last year, and they mentioned that they are sending 4 to 5 dead bodies back to India every month. I mean, this is a big number. And when reporter reach out to us and they were like asking what we feel about it, they asked Canadian government, are you guys tracking the number? But they were not tracking it. The figure 4 to 5 they got it from the funeral home. It's a funeral home in GTA. What about other regions? What about Vancouver, West Coast? I mean, nobody knows the actual number. How can we find a solution to a problem if we don't even know the scale of the problem? What is going on? Just think about someone who's here for a better future, who have sold everything, sold land, sold their parents have sold the businesses and whatever they have done to arrange enough funds to get a Canadian education for their children, and somehow in a year or two they are attempting suicide, they are drug addicts, and I mean, this is a real very big problem, and we are moving towards humanitarian crisis. We know the hundreds of thousands of people whose permits are expiring. I mean, from yesterday's conversation, Minister was basically trying to say that they are trying to set up an example. They were basically like, they were already very clear that everyone won't get the PR. But the thing is, I mean, we are talking about actual human lives. We know our people, somebody who have already lost everything that they have, the resources they have. No one would like to go back. You know, they will stay here. But the thing is, how? This is an already vulnerable population, and the current government policies are making them more vulnerable to all sorts of exploitation. You guys might have heard of the international students seeking asylum claims in Canada. The number of Indians crossing, illegally crossing the U.S. border, the number is going up. All of us have seen in the mainstream media. In GTA alone, LMIA map says that in GTA alone, 13,000 LMIAs were approved. And not in GTA, but in the region of Peel. And most likely they were all sold. And I think that is a very reason why we don't see a ground movement on that scale. That the permits of 100,000 people, more than 100,000 people are expiring, but we are not listening voices that much. I think this is because of asylum claims, because of the LMIAs, but eventually next year the permits will be expiring again because we have limited number of PR pathways, PR opportunities. Everyone who is here, their actual goal is permanent residency. The PGWP extension or any other work permit extension is just a banded solution. So even after the next year or year after, we will be at the same place discussing the same issues. So the actual reason is permanent residency, more and more pathways. And the thing is, Canada needs people. When we talk to MPs, we talk to ministers, they're all saying we need million of people, we need 500,000 people in skilled trades by the end of this decade. And Canada doesn't have those people. And where Canada gonna get those people? It is this population, existing population who's on temporary residency permits. They are the people who are going into those trades that nobody else want to get into, whether it's construction, any other skilled trade, or healthcare, or some other trades related to food security. But and I think the government understands this, and the very reason they are still not doing anything is because of the online hate against immigrants. The very consensus that was in favor of immigration in Canada from last couple of decades is fading away, and I think I mean that's what I feel it's like the governments are afraid. Even a party like NDP, they are not speaking that much about immigration these days. I mean, they are known as pro-immigration, right? But we are not listening from them that much often as compared to we were listening from them last year when there were another deportation, protest was happening against the deportation. So this is all because of the hate against immigrants, the online propaganda that is going against immigrants. If the rents are double, it is double for immigrant as well. And it is not it was never an immigrant who was bidding against 1 million house for 2 million or 2.5 million. Those were just not immigrants, right? We don't want to go into the direction that who were those actually people were, but the government's policies, their recent announcements make it look like not directly but indirectly the immigrants are the problem. And unfortunately, apparently, in last couple of months, we have seen the people are actually buying that narrative. Everybody started thinking that immigrants are part of their problem. Actually, they are their problem. That's what the people are thinking. But the reality is, right now we are in economic slowdown. Eventually, the interest rates are coming down. The economy will be back on track again, most likely by the elections next year. And Canada will again need people. And everyone understands this. But the thing is, the human suffering, the number of people who are suffering right now, what we will do about it. And this is, I'm from Sikh Student Association. I'm president of an organization that is the premier Sikh advocacy group. But we know this is only not a Sikh, Hindu, or issue of Indians, or it's an issue of any one single community. And I think all people from all backgrounds, all immigrants from all backgrounds have to come together. We need to work together against this injustice. I think that is the only way forward. Otherwise, we have always saying, divided we fall, united we stay. Right? We will get through this if we stay united. Otherwise, we are all doing our work. We are doing our part of thing, advocacy, representation, and I know other organizations are also doing it. But we are not going anywhere. But the only way we will make an impact if we can work together. Thank you.
So in the interest of dialogue, I was told by the organizers that perhaps we can open up the floor for questions from the audience. I have a list of other questions I want to ask, but we have a lot of people here. It's a packed room. It's amazing that everyone's out here. So if there are people who have questions they want to ask, please raise your hands. And I'll just kind of pause and see.
There's a question there.
Okay. And if you can introduce yourself as well, that would be fantastic. Sure, yeah.
So something I've been learning about. Oh, sorry. My name is Tusha. I'm a student in our class, and we're here today because a lot of us are interested in immigrant issues. I'm an international student myself and affected by this. So I was just gonna ask, when you're organizing, do you find that you're facing one issue and then that gives you consciousness of other issues and how they're all interconnected? And do you also find that because of this kind of raised consciousness, you guys are able to tackle problems better? And work with other organizations better. So for example, with the Palestinian protests and all, I know a lot of organizations like NSN also goes there and shows solidarity, and then in turn, organizations show solidarity back. And so, I just wanted to hear a bit about that.
So that was a fantastic question. Tanisha was asking about coalition building and also how a lot of our struggles are interconnected, right? That you can't kind of look at one issue in silos. So thank you for that. Should we just pass the mic? Who wants? Oh, do you want a couple of questions at a time? You can pass the mic. Thank you so much. There's another question there as well.
Hi,
I think I'm loud enough, so everybody can
But
hear
I think
me.
it's on Zoom, so maybe
Also,
people need to use the mic. The other mic is probably on, or no, he can just
Maybe we'll collect one more, so we'll have 3. Oh, perfect. Yeah.
I'm interested in the discussions that all of the panelists talked about in terms of the narratives. Like there are these growing narratives to target and blame migrant communities. And one of the concerns that I have, just in terms of all of you spoke, the injustice against one group does not permit speaking against or negating injustice against others. How do we, as particularly people in an academic setting, how do we fight against those narratives? I mean, it seems as if all of us are struggling against the same cause, but what are strategies that you would suggest for us to just kind of like counter-narrate that, those kinds of speech? My name is Daryl Bradley. I'm a PhD student here.
Now, there was one hand that kind of shot up as well, so we'll just do 4 and then we'll see. Yeah.
introduce yourself.
Okay. Hello, my name is Evelyn. I'm a 4th year student from University of Toronto. And thank you for the amazing talk. That was really thoughtful and great. My question is, from my understanding, there has been a consistent rise of discrimination against South towards like targeting like South Asians. And my question is, in places like Brampton, where a significant portion of residents are like South Asian, some local Canadians have expressed concerns about the country's approach to immigration. While Canada aims to inclusive and aim diverse cultures, some still kind of worry about focusing on one ethnic or race people might affect the nation's identity. And I was wondering if I could hear your thoughts on this.
Does anyone want to start, and then we'll just pass the mic?
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for the question. I think those are all very important questions. On the first question about how do we organize based on issues, do we identify the interconnectedness after finding one issues and then another and then another? I think specifically and particularly with Migrante, our analysis is that the root causes of our forced migration, the poverty in the Philippines, landlessness, land grabbing, fascism, corruption, are all rooted from the 3 basic ills that we identified as imperialism, bureaucrat capitalism, and domestic feudalism. So with this, being faced with issues such as racism in the host countries or having to leave back home because of militarization, etc. We already saw the roles of of who is the perpetrator of this all. What is the root cause, right? Once you have identified the root causes, you organize around that, and that's why Migrante Canada also holds an anti-imperialist perspective, just like how we align with other organizations, other solidarity organizations that we work with. On the second question about the narratives targeting and the institutions, right? Academic institutions, the role. I think I can only speak from my experience organizing in grassroots community, right? But also I also have experience working in research. I think the most important part is I would just quote a quote from IMA, which is basically their what IMA always say is, or International Migrants Alliance. There is nothing about migrants without migrants and migrants, grassroots migrants organization. Similar to this, the role of the academia and institutions like York University is always to include the voices of the most marginalized, of the migrant workers, of temporary foreign workers, of international students, when they make changes, may it be in policies that affects the institutions, or may it be anything basically that affects the daily lives of the students. Imagine if a university makes decision without engaging with what the students actually really needs, right? Who is it for, right? Like what Javier earlier mentioned, whenever we think about these things, we always have to keep in mind for what and for whom. Who does it benefit? Who does it affect? Who are the people involved in these decisions? May it be the impact or the reason behind it, right? So I think the role of the institution really is to highlight, amplify, support the voices of the marginalized. In terms of the narratives, targeting and blaming migrant communities, injustice against one group doesn't negate injustice against another. How do we, the question was about that, right? So example earlier that were mentioned by many is the housing issues, food insecurities, unemployment, among others that are being blamed on the international students and the migrant community. Well, this is the easiest approach and response, of course, by politicians and the popular media, right? The easiest way always is to turn your cheek around and put the blame on the most vulnerable. But these issues are manifestations and direct results of neoliberal policies that allows corporations to monopolize the wealth and maximize profit by creating crises, such as housing crisis. For what? To increase market value of commodities. Who does it benefit, right? Who does it serve? Again, for whom and for what? And blaming international students and migrant workers, who does it benefit and who does it affect? So these are the results, direct results of capitalism. International students have nothing to do with this. In fact, like what mentioned earlier, their contribution to the economy through their tuition, labor, consumption, among many others, have contributed to a big amount in Canada's GDP. Clearly, international students are not to be blamed on this. And of course, an attack on the international students and migrant workers with temporary status is an insult and attack to the majority of Canadians and permanent residents who are from the working class people facing these issues. And I think that's all the questions.
I'm going to share two stories that I think capture what these four questions were getting to, and I want to leave it open for your interpretation and hear what you think. We're steps away from Jane and Finch, which is a community that has been gutted by all levels of government, denied social services, there's rampant discrimination, there's police brutality every day, and increasing immigration raids. Some of the first immigration raids that in collusion with Canada Border Services Agency and the Toronto Police Services have happened just down the street here. Same time, one of our members, Charles Mwangi, was facing deportation on August 30th, one day before Emancipation Day. Emancipation Day is the day that a lot of the colonizing countries celebrate to say that their former colonies are now liberated from themselves. In fact, it's quite strange. He works and lives in Jane and Finch, and he is an undocumented personal support worker, healthcare worker. He's also a good comrade and dear friend of ours. Vedant, Ali Reza, we're all part of the same organization. He was facing deportation and he fought against his deportation and he won. He is a queer man from Kenya and he showed his refugee claim was denied. He showed proof that he would face persecution back home. And the Canadian government still wanted to deport him. It in fact is similar to the story of the international students who were facing deportation last year at the Morcha, who showed their documents and said the recruiters had scammed them, and yet they were the ones being punished. Every day we see that it's migrants who are being punished for these rules, and yet migrants speak up. Charles led a picket outside his member of parliament's office, just in Jane and Finch here. And originally, when we first got there, the MP office said that, okay, we'll let you guys in and talk to you. He's a constituent. Well, we have a responsibility to serve you. We rallied outside. He shared his stories. People who love him, care for him, community members also shared their stories. People from organizations, including the Jane and Finch Action Against Poverty, who has been holding it down in this community for a very long time, shared. And after that, the MP office said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we can't let you in." They were scared. It was all racialized people. It was black people out there, and they said no. Why? It's a danger to the staff there. Did we leave? No. We stayed and rallied and said, we will stay until you follow through on your commitment. And eventually they did meet with Charles. They met with the community members, right? He eventually stopped his deportation. Not because this MP or these politicians did that out of the goodness of his heart, of their hearts, but because he fought and he also joined forces with others like him. Just out of curiosity, how many of you were at the Jane and Finch picket for Charles? No? Okay. Don't worry, because there are going to be more. Why? Because, as Javier said, and as this flyer says, and as IRCC said 2 weeks ago, 1.2 million permits are expiring by the end of 2025, and they expect every single one of us to leave. Will we leave? No. You said this. Many of us can't go back. We have made massive sacrifices to come here, but also we have roots here. We're part of organizations. We're part of your unions. We're part of communities here. We're not going to go. An injury to one is an injury to all of us, and we have to recognize that, whether we are migrants or not. On this question of academic institutions, already after the cuts to study permits, Colleges of Ontario and the Council of Ontario Colleges have come out saying, look, these cuts are going to impact our revenue, which means that we can't commit to the housing projects that we've said that we would. We can't build infrastructure. We're going to close down our campuses, as it happened in Seneca. We're also going to hire more people on temporary contracts to our local and regional context. We have to be out there on the ground doing investigation, social investigation in our communities to know what are the issues, what are the priorities that matter to our people. That's why organization is important. It also means that maybe if you're not part of an organization, you can fight disinformation, not only in these kind of spaces, which is so important, but also around your kitchen table, in the hallways, anywhere where there are people and you know that they are maybe curious or have bought in or to these false narratives. We can speak up against it. Sometimes we need the tools to do that. So at the Migrant Rights Network, we do have some tools and speaking points so that we can support people individually to challenge disinformation that is dividing us. But also right now is the time to be joining organizations. If there isn't an organization near you, you can form one. But there is most definitely an organization near you, right? And we can chat after to talk about that. The Naujawan Support Network is one of them. JFAP, Jane and Finch Action Against Poverty, is one of them. The Migrant Workers Alliance for Change is a migrant-led and membership-based organization. So if you are not a migrant, there are other ways that you can get involved with the Migrant Rights Network. But again, we have to challenge this right now, and there are many struggles being waged in our city. And as Jaspreet said, things are about to get bad, maybe worse. So we really have a duty to be defending each other. And one of our principles at the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change, adapted from Asada Shakur, is that we also have a duty to win.
Online we are listening a lot that they are taking our jobs, and I think the recent economic slowdown is just fueling this propaganda, and especially we are listening things like there are no summer jobs for our kids, but the thing is there were no summer jobs for anyone because of the economic slowdown. But I think I mean, on social media, it is. But I mean, that is a narrative that apparently people are buying. I mean, not trying to be rational, not trying to understand what is actually happening behind. The other example is, I mean, recently we have seen people talking about stereotyping Brampton And also when someone talks about Brampton, they don't mean Brampton. They mean always brown people. You might have seen a lot of videos on some Instagram pages, on Twitter, talking about accident in crazy drivers of Brampton. But I mean, to be honest, I'm from Brampton. I have never. I mean, I know what types of drivers we have in Brampton, right? It's not that bad. And also, whenever there's an accident, doesn't matter wherever it is from. I mean, those social media handles, they will always portray that incident as this is from Brampton. And when they say Brampton, they mean brown people. And I think this is a universal reality that immigrants are always more successful compared to the existing population, because immigrants are the people who left everything behind. The only their goals will be always clear. They might be doing 2 jobs or 3 jobs, and they always wanted to be professionally, financially stable, strong, and that's why we might see those people maybe going ahead. And I mean, recently we have seen when the big tech companies were doing massive layoffs, who still had the job. Someone who's working at a Tim Hortons, someone who's working at a McDonald's or something. And why those are mostly immigrants or international students? Because I mean, think about 3 or 4 years ago, nobody wants to do those jobs, and the only population that agree to work on minimum wage, and unfortunately sometimes even less than that, are the immigrants, are the international students. But because of the recent economic slowdown, especially the last 2 years, when someone who's working in an IT company or any other top of the line job, and when they got laid off, they started looking around, and then they see that these people, most of the time brown people, are still working in the restaurants, and they're still working, and then started stereotyping the population that these guys are taking our jobs. But the reality is they are not taking the jobs. I mean, those were the jobs, no one wanted to do it, and they just started doing them. And food, restaurants these are the industries that never slow down, even in how severe the recession is. So yeah, I mean, this was something I think someone mentioned the Brampton, that why people think like that. So that was my kind of response to it. I mean, this is nothing new. This happens in all communities, but this is unfortunate reality, and I think we have a long way to go as a community. We need to understand each other, and things take time. I mean, we as a humanity, as a community, we came too far, and it's just I think matter of time and a matter of unity, how closely we work together, trying to understand each other, and we will get through this, definitely.
There's a lot of ongoing issues regarding the immigrants, regarding the work permits, regarding the permanent residency, and protests of these stand in or point marches like that. They kind of reflect that there is an ongoing issue that's not being heard by the government, that's not being heard in the ways that they want it to be heard.
That this economy is in a permanent state of need for so-called migrant temporary laborers. But they're not allowed to be permanent. Why? To cheapen their lives, to make them expendable, just like they make indigenous people's lives and lands expendable.
People are suffering, the students are suffering. We talked to many of the people over here that are out of their status right now, and what they're trying to do is get back into the system, because they do want to live within the Canadian society, they do want to live impact in Canadian society. It's not like they're not contributing to it. They are contributing to it, and they want to do it more, just like other Canadians.
Because workers are workers are workers. And when you come after one worker, you are coming after every single worker in the province of Ontario, and you're coming after every single worker in the country of Canada.
PR doesn't grant them that right to put more effort into society and, grow on their Canadian dream, live their Canadian dream.
If we fight for our rights, we automatically more integrated, more assimilated into Canadian community.
Now the question is whether this Canadian dream is alive or not, and protests like these kind of reflect on that, because there have been a lot of issues and problems that are unaddressed, and issues regarding the state, how long these people can stay in Canada.
They need somebody to be blamed, and historically when our country in an economic crisis, migrants are being blamed. So they're saying, you guys are, or us, it is our fault that the rents are too high. It is our fault that food prices are unaffordable.
What Canadian wants and what these immigrant wants, there's this big clash of ideologies. It's better we talk more to these students, to these workers, and figure out what they think, and all those people who have joined them to support them.
And what we want to do is try to get us together in different ways to show that our fights are similar. The postgraduate work permits, the farm workers, the caregivers, the construction workers, the fights are similar, and we need to fight together.
It begins to
Thank you for saying that. Is there a problem? Because I feel like there's an echo.
It's just switching over the sound.
Use one mic, right? One of them.
Can you check now? I think this was.
Is this better? Yes. Okay, great. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but I guess we have to account for that now. Before I sort of turn it over to our friends from the Naujawan Support Network, I would just like to say, when I was sort of tasked with moderating this part of our teaching today, I was discussing with Tanya, Raj, and Shoma, who I often describe as my co-conspirators. It's so interesting because there's a whole bunch of people with very disparate organizing styles that we are bringing into this room. And so, obviously we're all working towards one shared goal, but how does sort of like one make semblance of bringing together these different styles and people, and also different origin stories and points, right? And I think the one thing that truly sort of like unites all of us is that we're all waiting. Waiting is sort of like that one pervasive phenomenon in all kind of immigrant lives, right? I'm obviously a PhD student at the Department of Anthropology, so a lot of sort of my own, and an international student myself, so a lot of my own sort of engagements are with waiting are obviously anthropological. I just want to very briefly read out, waiting for this or that is an indication of our life that is worth living, right? Waiting indicates that we're engaged in and we have expectations from life, that we're on the lookout for what life is going to throw our way. And also, questions of waiting can yield further another set of questions, right? What kind of waiting is exhibited in and by our friends in the Naujawan Support Network? We all wait for futures, right? But as we have heard from our panelists before, and as we will hear from our friends from the Naujawan Support Network, that some waits that we all wait for futures, but not all of them are the same waits, right? Nor in the same way, nor in the same tempo. And Canada, because of it being a settler colonial project, produces multiple worlds and multiple temporal horizons. So the multiple and ambivalent forms in which agency sort of takes shape in relation to waiting is, I think, what unites us and also what makes us interested in the international student movement across different originary points. The sort of questions again of power, right? Because who is waiting for whom? And so therefore, who has the power to make time more valuable in comparison to someone else's time? With that, I'm going to sort of give it over to my friends at the Naujawan Support Network. If I could start with the question of, could one of you please tell us what is the Naujawan Support Network as an organization? What is its role, and how did it come to play such a significant, how is it so significant in its contribution to international students from India and Punjabi international students?
Hello, thank you so much for inviting us. It's an opportunity for us. So I'm gonna answer this question with few stories. Thank you so much for inviting us here at this event. My name is Lovepreet Singh, and I came here from Punjab as an international student in 2017. And I am one of the members with Naujawan Support Network. So, why we formed this organization? That's the first question. We give hope. We give hope, and we teach people how to fight back. First of all, these days, everybody thinks in this environment, we are victims, and they are in their mindset. And from that particular mindset, they thought they're not able to fight back because they are vulnerable. If employer can threaten them to deport, so these are the reasons why international students are not getting fight. So there are a few stories I wanted to share. In simple words, let me introduce what is NSN first. NSN is a group of international students and immigrant workers in GDA who got tired of exploited and dedicated to fight back. Our members work in factories, warehouses, trucking, restaurants, construction, and more. All our workplaces are non-unionized. We are underpaid, overworked, attacked by employers when we assert our rights. Let me introduce you with the 3 NSN members who faced these conditions. Their name was Gagan, Rohit, and Satinder. So let me share their stories. Gagan was hired by a truck company owner in Brampton. The truck Gagan drove often overheated and broke down on the highways. He was scared for his life and the life of other drivers. So he asked his employer to fix the truck after 1 month on the job. Instead of repairing it, the employer blamed the employee, the Gagan, for causing the truck's problem and told him to keep driving it. Gagan refused. He quit and asked for his pay for the last month. The employer laughed and told Gagan, unless you work for the next year, you're not getting any pay. Gagan lost out $5,500 in wages. Rohit, another member for the NSN, was hired by a butcher shop in Cambridge to deliver meat to restaurants across southern Ontario. He worked up to 15 hours per day without breaks. The employer paid Rohit late and did not pay him vacation pay, holiday pay, or overtime pay at all. One day, Rohit was called to work early after finishing a late shift the night before. He got into an accident on the highway that morning. The employer blamed Rohit for the accident and tried to get him to agree on an illegal wage deduction to pay for the damage to the company's vehicle. Rohit refused. So the employer fired him, held his last 2 paychecks, and told him that if he ever complained, the employer would get him deported. He lost $8,000 in wages. Satinder was hired by a Mississauga restaurant owner to cook, clean, and take orders. The employer offered Satinder a wage of $8.33 per hour and promised to support her application for permanent residency. If she accepted the low wage, Satinder accepted and worked regularly 12-hour shifts, 6 to 7 days a week. During the height of the pandemic, she fainted from exhaustion twice while at work. The employer did not send her to the doctor or give her time to rest. When her PR application was going to file, the employer refused to provide the promised support unless Satinder worked for another year. Satinder chose to quit, but asked employer to pay her the minimum wages for all the hours she had worked. The employer refused. Satinder lost $18,000 in the wages. At the same time, the Gagan, Rohit, Satinder, and thousands of other immigrant workers were being exploited in these ways. Something amazing was happening back in the homeland. Farmers and farm workers from Punjab and Haryana was organizing the largest and the longest mass protest in human history. The farmers laid a siege on India's capital city, New Delhi, for an entire year to demand and eventually win the repeal of 3 pro-corporate law forms. While the farmers were protesting in India, thousands of people here in the GTA attended weekly solidarity rallies to support them. During those rallies, something else amazing happened. Young workers like me and you started to meet and talk to each other about their problems they were facing in Canada. One of the main problems was exploitation at work, which was pushing many into poverty, homelessness, depression, and sometimes suicide. Drawing on the spirit and the victory of the farmers' protest, a small group of workers came together to try to change these conditions. Those workers nowadays called the Naujawan Support Network. Naujawan means, in Punjabi word, young people. What we do? Gagan, Rohit, and Satinder became members of NSN, fought for their wages, and won back every single penny they were owed. At least 143 other NSN members like them have recovered over 763,000 of their own wages from their former employers. They have done this by directly confronting their employers face to face. Let me explain what this means. Each campaign against wage theft starts with the workers joining a WhatsApp group chat, gathering evidences for their claims, then writing a letter demanding payment of stolen wages by a set deadline. The workers deliver the letter to the employer's home and wait for the response. If the employer doesn't pay the wages by the deadline, the workers launch a public campaign. They have begun by posting the employer's name, photo on the social media, then put up posters and leaflets in their neighborhood, and eventually protest in front of the employer's home or business if needed. In the beginning, employers responded to our letters in one of the three ways. They ignored us, hired lawyers to sue us, or threatened us to assault or deport us. We responded by doing exactly what we said we would do in our letters. We started public campaigns and we protested. Our protests have been attended by hundreds of workers, community members, and trade union members, like you guys. Employers have attacked us at some of these protests, called police to remove us, or actually sued us. But like the farmers in India, we have held our grounds and refused to back down. Over time, employers started responding differently to the letters we delivered. They started apologizing, giving explanations for the stolen wages, pleading for the time to pay, or asking to negotiate. This was a big victory in itself, turning the employers who used to behave like kings into humble, ordinary men. As this was happening, more and more members of our group were able to recover their wages through private negotiations with employers without ever having to stage a protest. That was a sign of our growing power as workers. Which is the next thing I want to talk to you about. Why we do it. There are two broad main goals for NSN work. The first is to achieve our immediate demands, usually the return of stolen wages, but sometimes also a written apology for abuse. The goal is easy to measure, but you can't put a number or a check mark on it. Our second goal is to build our collective power as workers. This is a long-term goal that can't be measured in numbers, but you can get a sense of progress we have made on it by comparing how things used to be versus how things are right now. Let me give you a few comparisons to show you what I mean. First, many workers in our network did not know how badly we were being exploited because we did not know our legal rights. We didn't know the minimum wage. We had never heard of vacation pay, overtime pay, and we used to believe it was illegal to work for cash or to quit without notice. Knowledge of the law has transformed our understanding of what our employers are doing to us. There is a power in that understanding. Number second, in our community, many workers used to rely entirely on the Ministry of Labor to stop wage theft. But we saw that firsthand that ministry does not seriously enforce its own laws and orders, and does not punish the employers who steal wages. Many of us also won our wages faster by working in NSN without ever filing the labor code claim. We have now begun to put more faith in one another. There is a power in doing things independently of courts and the government. Third, workers are used to be disconnected from each other. We did not know about the thousands of other workers in our city who were dealing with the same issue as us. Because of that, Whenever workers fought for their rights in the past, we fought alone. NSN, Naujawan Support Network, has changed that by creating a space or platform for workers to come together, get to know each other, talk about our issues, and show up in each other's struggles. There is a power in deepening these connections between workers. Number 4, employers used to believe they could silence us through violence or threats. They have completely lost their confidence in that. Of course, some employers might still attack us. In fact, they will attack us at some point. But the difference is that now they expected us to respond. Many of them fear what the response might look like. So the response is fear for them. That fear in the employers is one of the clearest signs of our growing power as workers. These examples show us that we have won much more in these 3 years of struggle than just our wages. Our relationship to each other and our employers are changing. Our belief in what we can achieve through our organizing is expanding, as is our employers' fear of those achievements. Our power is growing and theirs shrinking. And this is just the beginning. Thanks so much.
Thank you for that. I think that's a really great start, and thank you for framing international students as workers, because I think that is something that often doesn't happen, and the ways in which international students are imagined, they're only often just imagined within the university. As these sort of siloed subjects, as if they don't, like everybody else in a university, exist in conjunction with the larger community. So they're obviously also, to a commuter campus, they're also commuters, they're also workers, right? Can you tell us about the postgraduate work campaign that has kind of become central to the work of the Naujawan Support Network? And also, maybe briefly, just what is the importance of the postgraduate work permit in the life of an international student?
Hi, my name is Mahakdeep Singh, and I'm also a proud member of Naujawan Support Network. But nowadays, I am affected with the policy changes by the government, and we entered the 70th day of permanent encampment by the PGWP holders in Brampton, 295 Queen Street East. So this campaign was started in April of this year. As a Naujawan Support Network always organize a public meeting, so we were having a public meeting in April. We invited students and some of other members from the community to talk on this issue. Then we got organized and we did some other meetings where we invited more international students and the work permit holders. This is how we started, and then we have some meeting with the MPs, MPPs, and worker unions and other organizations, but the meeting didn't give any positive outcome, like the meeting with the MPs and MPPs. And then we discussed on this issue with them. We did some rallies, some other programs on the encampment site, and we gathered the community. Community responded very well, and nowadays also. So as you said, what is the how the PGWP can profit to the international students' life, right? So when any of a student completes his graduation in this country, he got a post-graduation work permit, a time to proceed for his permanent residency. So when if we go for 2 years of program in studies, we got a 3 year of work permit. What we got. in the previous years. And so we have some particular streams to work on for the permanent residency, like on the federal side and the provincial side. Some of us are targeting provincial programs, and some of us are targeting federal programs. So the federal program is Canadian Experience Class. When any worker completes 1 year of experience in NOC 0 A and B, he is good to apply for file in Canadian Experience Class stream. But they paused it for 2 years and 8 months, like from September 2021 till May 2024, they paused it. So out of 3 years, 2 years and 8 months, there were no draws. We didn't got any chance to go for the federal permanent residency. On the other side, and in provincial, I will talk about Ontario. There are 9 streams, and majority of us target international graduate stream and skills stream. So there are many few numbers for the international graduate, and we have time sensitive, like only 2 years within the graduation to apply for that. So a lot of time just we got wasted in finding genuine jobs. As I don't know if you know, but consultants and employers are selling the job offers in GTA nowadays, like in every single program, AIPP, Atlantic Immigration Program, RNIP, Rural Northern Immigration Program, PNPs, LMIs, they are sold, which is illegal. So if anyone wants to find like genuine job, it is hard to find within few months. So it took 6 to 8 months. Then we have to complete 1 year of experience, and then we apply for the file, and it took 6 to 7 months normally to like we wait for the draws from the provincial side, and many of the occupations are waiting from more than 1 year. They are not getting draws. So last year they were telling like they need skilled workers, but this year all those skilled workers just got 1 draw, and only hundreds of invitations. But people targeted in the numbers were in thousands. So they all are affected in this thing. And after that, if anyone is getting invitation in provincial programs, and processing time is more than a year now. So they are waiting for the decisions. So in this whole time, the work permit is getting expired, and they are not getting any extensions just because of their own fault. Maybe they have a lack of staff, or I don't know why, like from 3 months it is taking more than 12 months to process a file. So this was the whole thing, like which seems unfair to us on both sides, like on federal side and on provincial sides. That's why we decided to protest, to gather, to get organized, and I will end with the demands. We have 4 demands. Very first demand was to extend the work permits that are expiring in 2024 and 2025. Second demand was fair PR pathways. Like I already told, there were no draws from the federal side, so it should be regularized. And on the provincial side, every single guy, every single worker who is targeting a stream should get a draw, at least 1 draw after completing his experience. Third demand is to stop LMIA-based exploitation. As I already told, the offer letters are being sold. So people are skipping the line, just getting the LMIAs and claiming 50 points in the pool, and just skipping the line and getting draws. So we want them to stop this thing, and there should be alternative to that. And the fourth demand is we are asking for the 5 years of postgraduate work permit to all the international students currently studying in public colleges with the 2 years of program. So they were also promised the same way we were promised about the permanent residency. So they also deserve the fair chances. But as I already told, what is the processing time going on, how the workers are being exploited, everything is going on. It is very difficult for them to get accommodated in 3 years of time. So it is easy for the government and for the workers to get accommodated in 5 years. Like the proposal to the government is like they can tell us now in 2026 or 2027 what are their long-term labor needs, in which area, which rural area, which province they need workers, so that the students can move in that province, learn the skill, and then get accommodated, and their labor needs will be filled. So this was the request to the government.
Thank you, Mayor Deep. I think that's a really important point you raise about how some of these new
important points or important steps in the immigration process or was being negligible or careless, because it's not possible that 200,000 people made the same mistake. It is a systematic problem, so we need to solve that systematic problem. So we are supporting, making sure that we have people who can support this encampment 24/7. So we try to organize rallies or march on the weekend. We have been getting support from community, as Mehak mentioned. So we are trying to get the media coverage as well, as much as we can. So that's the normal day and kind of how the day looks like. Everyone is working on the background. There are we have been getting a lot of support from community and everything. But it is getting colder, and yes, definitely there is a risk. We are sitting just beside the highway, and the cars and the vehicles are passing by every time. People are scared of, because it's just beside the highway, so definitely there is a lot of risk and lot at stake.
Can one of you tell us about how difficult it's been to have to live for close to 70 days in the encampment while also simultaneously fighting off all of the hate that you've been receiving online? Because just from having spoken to you and been in community with many of you, I know that that is a pressing concern. So what does the nature of online hate look like, and what have you been doing to fight it?
Hello everyone, my name is Simrat. I'm also a part of the encampment. So initially when we started the protest, we faced a lot of hate online as well as while on the road as well. We have faced people shouting different bad words at us, asking us to go home, and a lot of racism as well. First, it's very important to acknowledge that all the racism that is being spread against immigrants as part of the propaganda that is being spread against us. We are being told that we are being scapegoated and told that we are the reason for the housing and the job crisis, which is very untrue if you actually acknowledge the core reasons for it. Those issues were already there. They didn't just happen suddenly. Those issues were already there in the market and in the economy. But just to blame it on certain category of people who are the most vulnerable, it is very important to know why this is happening. But we believe it's the ignorance in the people which is leading to this hate. We have also faced a lot of hate online as well when we have put up certain on Instagram or on TikTok. We have seen people putting videos against us while they don't even know what's the actual matter. So it's very important to for us to join, to raise our voice when there's misinformation being spread as well, but also to acknowledge why that hate is there. So the first thing is to spread awareness. So many people don't even know the issue, and they just blame us and they just shout slogans at us. So anyone who comes us and does that to us online or in person, it's very we try to provide them the knowledge why we are sitting here. Firstly, they believe that because it is mostly Indians, they believe it is a matter of Indians. So they ask us to go home. But when you know it is not a matter of few hundreds or thousands, it is a matter of 100,000 people, but it's only us who are showing their face in the public or who are coming out. then you need to understand that it's not a matter of a community. It is something that is being faced by so many people in the Canada. And it is important to know that the system is the one to blame. The government of Canada clearly puts out on their website for us to come in this country, to study here, to work here, and then it gives us an opportunity to stay here. But when we are right in the middle of that and they change the rules, who's the one to blame? We're not the ones to blame here. We are following all the rules that they ask us to do. We did our completed our education, we did our experience, but then when you ask us that, okay, now you have completed the experience, but we don't want you. We want you to go back. Then there's not a certain category of people who are to blame. It is the system who has to blame, who has to acknowledge that these are the people, these are actual humans. And that is something that we believe it is, when that awareness and that knowledge you provide them to the people, they acknowledge that yes, this is wrong that is being done to us.
Thank you, Simrat, for those very powerful words. Before I sort of move on to audience questions, I will say it should be pointed out that if you sort of go to the website of the Canadian government, their campaign for international students still to this day says study, work, stay.
Yes.
Yeah. So despite all of the policy changes and despite the immigration minister, the federal immigration minister, Mark Miller, saying that international students should not think of their ability to come and study at Canadian institutions as a right, it's a privilege, is how he framed it. But yes, at the moment, their very own website still says, come study, work, stay. With that, I'd like to open the floor up to questions. Do we have any audience questions?
Thank you so much, guys, for coming and telling us about these things, because so many of the things that you said, I was personally not aware of. My question to you is, when you were talking about racism and people, saying all those words to you and stuff, have you been facing racism from within the community as well? Like the people who maybe came 5 years ago or like 20 years ago, are they being racist to you, and what is that experience like? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bikram Singh. I'm a PGWP committee member and also NSN member. We are facing especially racism mainly when we start this campaign in PGWP campaign like 6 months ago. We notice comments from fake IDs, especially on TikTok and then on Instagram. And then when we start sleeping on the road, when we start our encampment, there will be so many, like daily 5 or 10 cars, when they cross from there, they are chanting loudly, go back to your country. And especially the hate, not like I can say racism, like a hate from, especially from Punjabi community, who are here from a long time, from 10 or 20 years ago, and now they are settled here. And most of them, they are employer and they are bosses, and we, as NSN member, we fight against them. So that's why they are asking us wrong questions, and they are putting like wrong blames on us, and we are answering those questions, and we are answering those crimes which we never committed. Like our issue is simple. 1,000 students are facing deportation and their work permits are expiring, and government is responsible for this situation. This is very clear thing. Everybody can understand in this room. And what they are asking us, why you guys are dancing in downtown? Why you guys are doing burnout in Trinity Plaza? Like I never went to that Trinity Plaza. I don't even know. like these kinds of questions. But why they are asking these questions? Because I can say it's hate in their mind. Because if you like, as if I say, for example, when you sit in a bus and that bus is full with passengers, and you don't want other passengers into that bus, no, take another bus. Same thing like that. So that kind of hate we we have seen from our, especially from Indian community, I can say. And one more thing, I think. There was a video or some circulating on social media when somebody did poop on a beach, and then everybody start making joke, especially on international students, like they don't know how to go on beach. They are using beach for this thing, right? And but on that day, on that time, our situation, like we start this PGWP campaign, we announce like. I still remember on so many times, like in every rally, in every meeting, we explain our community to PGWP holders, to everybody. It's not about international students.
First of all, thank you so much for asking this question. Our organization believes that no struggle, we cannot win any struggle without the contribution of females or women. So this is very crucial, this is very, very important. So we feel that we are fortunate, very good fortunate, because in this morcha we have contribution from the females too. As my sister Navjot and Sirt are here, like 6 to 7 more female international students are there in the morcha, and they are actively participating in the morcha. They came to the morcha and they took responsibilities to other things like drafting the letters and taking care of the food and other things. So they are actively participating. But still, it's a challenge for us. This is a challenge for us. We want to spread the awareness. We want that if a female is getting exploited, at least she can come out and stand for herself. But we believe it's gonna happen when we get a female leader or a female face who can lead this movement. Because if 4 or 5 men is gonna go there and talk to a female, it's gonna be a little bit weird, right? So if we have like a team for 3 females, 3 men, we go to a place where a female is harassed or exploited, so she's more comfortable talking what's gonna happen to her. So even in our organization, we're trying our best to aware more females or more women so that they can come join NSN, because we are lagging behind in this thing. This is our limitation, and we are still trying on that. So this is a very serious issue. We are aware of that, and we are trying our best. If you have any suggestions or solutions, please tell us. We will adopt that. Thank you.
I also want to share one more thing like this, how we are able to manage this 70 days encampment, only because our sisters and our, because they are supporting us. There was a situation when there was a question in front of us, who will quit the job first? So our sister, like we have one team for 7 or 8 members. They are managing from morning 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock to till late night 11 or 12 o'clock daily. They like 4 or 3, 2 Navjot, Simrat, and Navjot is working, but Simrat, she quit her job, and 4 other girls, they are like their husbands are working, but those other 3, they quit their jobs. They daily sit there, and other members, they join them afternoon and in the evening, and mainly we like all join on the one special rally. But that's how we are, like we have. She was feeling very shy on the day 1 when she joined this encampment. But you can see her today, she's like a leader. She's speaking here, right? Navjot, she was following us, NSN. She was following NSN from a long time. But when she came to our protest, from that day to today, she's here with us. So we are trying our best, but still, I cannot say we are we are the best or we are 100% perfect. But we need your suggestions.
Exactly.
We will work on it. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. First of all, this is really important question. That why females are not in the decision making. We just don't want them to support. We want them to make the decision. And in this committee, PGWP committee, we named it. I can assure that all the decisions we are making, females are equally participating. We have been trying to draft some suggestions or recommendations for the reform in the immigration system or PR pathways, and we have been very mindful to include in that proposed solutions to include everybody, not just skilled jobs which are men oriented, but also the jobs our sisters are doing. So that is one thing. And also it's important, like it's easy to say that women should come forward, but because historically we have been oppressed, right? So it is not just the responsibility of the oppressed, but it is the responsibility of the privileged to make sure to pull that with this encampment, we are trying to create a safe space. So if you get any time to visit us, for example, I work 9 to 5, and after 5 I do some housework, and then I join Morja at 6 or 7 o'clock, and then we are there discussing all the things, doing meetings at 10, like 10ish in the night. So that's very safe space. We have been trying to create a safe space. If anybody visit us any day randomly, you would see that it's really safe space for women, and we are equally participating, or at least trying to participate. No decisions have been made only by the faces or the men. We are trying to create that space, but definitely collectively we all need to do a lot in this space, because girls have more obligations. Like sometimes they don't want to show their face in the media. Sometimes they have family restrictions that you cannot go.
After training for 2-3 years of COVID. I have been honored to be the president of Graduate Students Association at York. This is the second year that I was elected as president. I'm also international student and worker. So I just wanted to appreciate and acknowledge the work that Raj, one of the YUGSA members, has done to organize. As you notice, like I'm part of the executive of the association, but for this meeting, like for this particular event, Raj did basically the most things, and I appreciate all the puffs and other groups that came, Migrant Students United, Joint Support Network, all the people who tried to organize and come here. So another round of applause for all these people. Now, what I've learned from these groups, being part of the Migrant Students United, wonderful Sarom is here as the leader of that group. I've learned from them, I've learned also from Joint Support Network that we really need to be organized and do collective action. And I've noticed that there's a gap for when it comes to international students. And that's also evident at York. We don't have any union for migrant students, migrant workers, even though I'm grateful that I've been migrant students as workers are also included in the QP union that we have here. However, we still have so many issues that nobody knows in mainstream discussions that are happening here. And because of that, YUGSA established, YUGSA is the acronym for our union, we as a student union established a migrant students committee recently.
Woo!
So while I want to encourage all of you to join No Support Network, go to the encampment, join Migrant Students United. I know that the Migrant Students United have recently started a new campaign of bringing more people from the universities inside. the movement. I also want to invite you guys, if you're a graduate student, but even if you're not graduate student, but you want to be part of the community of the Migrant Students Committee of YUGSA, please reach out to me. I think we got like notes of like the names and emails, but it's easy to reach out to me. My email is president@yugsa.ca. So if you are wonderful profs, if you know anyone from your classroom, you can just also tell them. I see Mustafa has something to say.
Just, I believe if also they can send email to Sean as a...
Yes. So we have an executive team at YUGSA. My email is president@yugsa.ca. We have a VP internal, and their email is internal@yugsa.ca. Whoever you want to email, you can also CC them. And I hope that with this, at York, we can kind of build the momentum, join other groups that have been doing the job for long, and take it one step further. And this is officially the end of the meeting. A round of applause for all of you. Thank you so much. So, sorry guys, there is an announcement that folks will make.
So we are daily updating about the Mocha on Instagram page. You can follow, that is stand_for_immigrant_workers. So stand for immigrant workers. And another page is Naujawan Sport Network. So you can follow both of the pages for the update. And we are having another event on 16th of November for one of our martyr, Sardar Kartar Singh Saraba. So we just request all of you, if you can come over there in the evening, 5 p.m. We are going to start it. So yeah. So the address is 295 Queen Street East in Brampton. Major intersection is Queen and Highway 410. So we hope you guys will come and